And I think we will go ahead and go into meditation, mandala. Lars will lead us again. That's
Okay.
good.
Okay. So just remember, what we're doing is thinking of all the marvelous things in the world and piling them all up in our imagination and offering to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. That's it. That's what we're doing. It's very auspicious, very meaningful. Every thought counts. Okay.
Do we have it on the screen?
No.
We should.
No? I'm sorry. I'm trying to share my screen, but something didn't work out. If you can just tell me if it shows up. 1 second.
Yes, it's coming. It's about.
Here we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes,
Okay.
I think we're ready. Om Sashi Pati Yuchi Travi Ravichi Nide Sange Meche Ukuna Dashina Jupakshu. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle. Oh, maybe go down with the text, Lina. Can do that for the last, yeah. The last line, upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamiya Chayami.
And when you say that little line, those Sanskrit words, you're imagining the Buddha happily accepts our offering. So now I'll sing the next one, lead the next one, as always, setting ourselves in the right direction, stating our purpose for being here together, which is the second 2 lines, the way, by the virtuous karmic seeds, it's saying that of listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha so we can be of benefit to sentient beings. And the first 2 lines are expressing our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. So I'll say it one time in English more extensively. I'll add extra words so we can get the meaning clear, and then sing it 2 times in Tibetan. So we're saying, until we are enlightened, we are going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then by the virtuous karmic seeds, we leave in our mind by listening to these teachings. May the goal be our own Buddhahood. So then, of course, we can be of benefit to others. Sangye chadang toke tognam la jancho badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chernyen gi pesonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shog. Sangye chadang toke tognam la jancho badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chernyen gi pesonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shog. All right. So there's lots of details. I mean, T.Y. Alexander's notes, if you've read those, and I hope you have, because that's going to be the basis of what even though she's saying many things in there that I mightn't say, or I say things differently, but you'll get the essence of it, But the essence of it, the essence of it is this. We're looking at the Buddhist view of what mind is and why we want to learn about the mind, first of all. Not just out of interest, under intellectual interest, is because it's the mind that is the source of our happiness and suffering. And it's the mind that has this marvelous potential to eventually get rid of the causes of suffering and to achieve happiness. That's the long-term purpose. That's what underpins this discussion of the mind. So it happens to be this knowledge about the mind, which is really quite different, as we can see from neuroscientific view, totally radically different from one point of view alone, which is that we're discussing here not the physical, but the actual subjective cognitive process itself. That's the point about the Buddha's view of the mind. So where does this information come from? Well, it comes from the Buddha. And even then, before that, much of this is already coming from his own studies and his experience as a meditator, before he even went in his own direction and got labeled the Buddha, Because these amazing Hindus well before the Buddha were the ones who came up with this view of the mind from their own direct experience. That's the point. That's the background to this. And so then when we get into the details, like we began last week looking into the different conceptual states of mind, you know, it's like, where do we get the information in the materialist model? With our microscopes looking at the brain. Brilliant. But here, where does this information come from? By putting the microscope of our mind onto the mind itself, you know. So, okay, so that's the first point. Generally, as we know, again, mind, 1, synonymous with the word consciousness. 2, it is not physical. It is not a function of the brain. It works interdependently with the brain at a grosser level. Absolutely, no argument. 3, it is not the handiwork of mummy, daddy, or a creator. These are the radical differences in the Buddhist view, which of course we can't prove yet. It's not possible. To really prove all this, you have to do this very job of even then learning to prove from your own direct experience that the mind is not physical by doing the job of doing what Buddha did. You know, so until then, it's a hypothesis. So then the mind, so that's the general point. Then, of course, the point I mentioned before, the potential of the mind, this insane, outrageous, radical potential to turn the mind into the mind of a Buddha. And if you start to listen to the qualities of a Buddha, it would sound like us in modern world, like science fiction. Very simple. But the fundamental point, which is underpinning all of this work, is, and it's a crucial one to understand, and I always quote it, but it's brilliant, is it's indicated by the etymology of this word. Buddha, Bud implies the utter eradication from the mind of all delusions and neuroses, negative states of mind, non-virtues, neurotic states of mind, disturbing emotions. They're all synonyms for this unhappy stuff that we're very familiar with, which Buddha radically has found are not at the core of our being, and thus can be removed. This is something, again, that's utterly unique to the Buddha. Second, we can develop to, this is the Mahayana in the long term, we can develop to perfection. This is indicated by Da, Buddha, all the virtuous states of mind. So clearly then the crucial point, and we're going to emphasize this again today, when we discuss the conceptual states of mind, again, as we started last week, but we'll continue today, you can divide them. It doesn't say this as much here. I quote this all the time. It's not saying this as much as I say it, but it's a crucial point to understand. There are some conceptual states of mind that are negative, neurotic, deluded, ridiculous, which we have to identify, and so we can get rid of them. Why? Because they cause suffering. Thank you very much. 2, there are those that are valid and virtuous and reasonable. You know. 3, there are a bunch that are kind of like what they call neutral, but which I like to call the mechanics of the mind, and we began this last week. So it's a really interesting way of presenting, you know. And so then we understand this. It's telling us the methods, it's indicating the knowledge of the mind in this way is telling us what we have to be looking out for. If we can get rid of the rubbish and develop the goodness, we clearly have to learn the techniques of how to identify them. It's very obvious, isn't it? And so here, as we began last week, and we're continuing today, is just some of these, identifying some of these neurotic, deluded, and virtuous states of mind. But also, it doesn't use the words mechanics here. It's my word. And they're usually referred to as the neutral states. And we began discussing these last week. So then the other way to talk about, so there's 2 ways to talk about how the mind functions. And classically in the text, and including T.Y., she talks about it like this, that the 2 ways the mind cognizes. One way is called perception, one way is called conception. Then another way to talk about how the mind cognizes, and I find this more helpful, it's implied in this first one, is that the mind we have sensory consciousness and we have mental consciousness. This is the crucial one to begin to see the difference between, because when we can start to see the way these 2 parts of our mind function, it's very, very sobering. We can really begin to see how we make up fantasies, how the conceptual mind lives in la-la land most of the time. So, you know, I really stress this way of putting it. So the first one, perception, this is one way of dividing perception and conception. And this is typically how they do it in the text and how T.Y. discusses it. So perception is, they talk about this as a very direct way of cognizing. And these, of course, sound a bit abstract to us. So then sensory consciousness in its nature is direct. There's nothing in between. You cognize certain thing and it's called perception. But then the other way, mental consciousness has the function also of perception. But virtually we don't access that in any real way until we've become great yogis, until we've gone beyond the conceptual way of talking. So perception is direct, conceptual is a grosser level, is only a function of the mental consciousness, not the sensory, and it's where we make up all the stories, and these are the concepts. So it's very fascinating to observe, to discuss how the concepts work, you know. So we began looking at some of the conceptual states of mind last week. This so-called, the term they use in Buddhist psychology is mental factor. So one way they describe the mind, and this is fairly abstract, you know, I mean, it's still how they talk about how we've got the main mind, and then we have these mental factors. So it's a bit like the main mind is just generally there, that just is basic cognition. And then the mental factors are the one that make up all the stories, you know. So it's just this kind of, so the real thing we have to learn to become familiar with is these different mental factors. I think we'd call them states of mind. We'd say like that, I'd say. So we began last week. We started looking at, you know, these different categories. There are 5 or 6 categories of some of these 51 mental factors. The reality is Buddha always talks about 84,000 neurotic mental factors. And then he's got another list of 84,000 antidotes to those. So clearly 51 is not that many. And whatever the evolution of this 51 is, I do not know, but it's coming well before the Buddha, I think. But I think these 51 are sort of some of the main ones, you know, that it's really good to become familiar with. So as we all know, you know, again, there's another grouping here called the 6 Root Delusions. But the 3 of these are really the main ones we think about all the time. Remember, you've got the delusions, the virtues, and then the third category, the mechanics. It's my term. So the 3 root delusions are fundamental to know. We know from any Buddhist teaching, you're going to start reading about the 3 poisons, these 3 toxic emotions. And Ling Rinpoche, the young Ling Rinpoche, who's a reincarnation, he's sort of 40-something now, of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's root guru, and one of Lama Zopa Lama Yeshe's root gurus, Ling Rinpoche. He often now says this, and I've heard this from many different people around the world, that he mentions always this particular point, which I had not heard before, but you hear it in other ways, that of all these 84,000, they all subsume, they all come to these 3. 21,000 of those 84,000 neurotic states of mind are rooted in the first delusion called ignorance. The second 21,000 are rooted in the second delusion called attachment, whatever order you like. And the third 21,000 are rooted in the third one, which is called aversion or anger. And the fourth 21,000 are rooted in all 3. Well, you can already see in one of the lists that TY is describing, if you've read the course notes, you'll see that several of the 20 there's a list of 6 root delusions. We're discussing the first 3. And then those 20 secondary delusions, as they call them, are all rooted in these 3. So they're all variations of these different. So it's a very coherent map, actually. It's very interesting. But I mean, of course, if we think of our model of the mind in the world, who would think that attachment, aversion, and ignorance are the 3 main causes of all the suffering? It just sounds ridiculous. You know, it's not the analysis we use at all. But this is the Buddhist analysis. So the key function of a deluded or neurotic or non-virtuous, and these are generally synonyms, state of mind, the key function, 2 key functions. One is they're deeply disturbing. Often they're referred to as disturbing emotions. Now you just remember the last time you were anxious, the last time you were angry, the last time you were jealous. Of course it was disturbing. It's pretty clear, isn't it? But the other one is so vital to understand. And that is to say, and this is indicated by this word delusion, which is a great word in English. I think in other languages it's not so clear. So you know very well if you're accused of being delusional, you're not in touch with reality. And I mean, this is exactly what Buddha is saying. We really only start to really look into that particular aspect when we start to look at the root delusion in the more advanced levels of teachings, when we learn about emptiness. But when we need to understand that here, and you can even see it in the definition. So for example, attachment of the 3 poisons, effectively in the Four Noble Truths, that's said to be the main cause of all our suffering. So what's the definition of attachment? I mean, if it's the cause of our suffering, we better know what it is. So let's get the theory first. The definition, pretty simply, is it's a conceptual state of mind. Now, we could spend the rest of just today and the next month trying to show how this intense emotion that we would call it, called attachment, is based on a bare bones concept. This is very surprising to us, but it's a conceptual thought, bare bones underneath. And it's a conceptual thought that exaggerates the delicious or the nice qualities of an object. So the key function of all the neuroses, all the delusions, all the non-virtues, all the negative states of mind, the key function is that they are concepts and they exaggerate. When we can start to experience the truth of this, I tell you, this is the real learning from learning this module. This is the real learning, you know. To identify when we have attachment, we're exaggerating the delicious qualities. When you have aversion, you're exaggerating the ugly qualities. When you have, you know, whatever the object might be, You know, if you've got over exaggerate your own beauty, you're exaggerating. If you under exaggerate, and we love to do that, I'm a creep, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm this, then that's aversion. So that's the key one. But the trouble for us is we are so in touch with the feeling, the emotion. We have to learn by paying attention to the mind to go beneath the emotion to get to the fundamental concept that underpins the emotion, you know. So the thing about conceptual state of mind, when we look at the epistemological model, and T.Y. looks at this very briefly, but it's a fascinating thing to understand. I'd really recommend that, just for your own interest, you study Geshe Tashi's book, published back in the 90s. It was the basis of, you know, it's published by Wisdom, called Buddhist Psychology. He talks about it, he's talking to English, you know, it was his teaching in English to his English students in London at our center there. So it's and he's kind of presents the mind in his own very modern way, you know, and it's very fascinating. And he talks there in a very lovely way about the way that conceptuality functions. And this is utterly fascinating, you know. So let's go back again and recall the difference between sensory consciousness and mental consciousness. This is enormous. I don't think T.Y. talks about it like this in here, but it's something that you can deduce it from reading her notes, that this is what it is. Sensory consciousness is just bare bones, you know, and then the mental consciousness is something completely different, but they work so hand in hand that we, without any analysis and any observation, would never be able to distinguish the difference, you know. So the point about the sensory consciousness is this, you know, and I use this example repeatedly, and this is where we get completely led up garden paths in our daily life. That's where we have to see the distinction between the sensory and the mental. So sensory consciousness, I mean, the way I put it is they're like dumb animals, with all respect to animals. They have very limited cognition, limited capacity for cognition. So eye consciousness merely cognizes only two things, shape and color. So this is really powerful. Then you have to realize, well, where does the divine, handsome Mark come? You know, if I'm in love with Mark and I say Mark is so divine, he is so handsome, then you have to ask yourself, well, if my eye consciousness could only cognize shape and color, well, that's very fascinating. What part of my mind is cognizing divine, handsome, delicious Mark? That's your mental consciousness, people. And that's where the concepts are. So again, remember, there are two ways our mind functions. Perception, that's a general English word, but it's got a very specific meaning in Buddhist psychology. And you have to learn that definition, otherwise you'll get confused. Perception is non-conceptuality, and there's a really powerful meaning in that. So there's direct perception. Senses are perceptual. Then at the mental level, we might have a flash of it at the first second, but effectively, we will never have direct mental perception until we're the greatest yogis at a subtler level of our mind. So that implies we live at the level of conceptuality. We live at the level of thoughts. So basically, divine, handsome Mark, within the millisecond, quicker than Google, that my eyes are seeing that shape and color, then I'm accessing my mental consciousness. And Lama Zopa says that's where the workshop is, you know. Instantly up comes from my memory, my whatever, all the stories in my mind, out will come the opinion, a viewpoint, divine, handsome Mark. So then we've got to unpack those mental states. That's the concepts. They're the concepts. So in this little text, it's 51, and T.Y. doesn't even mention the 51, you know, so at least learn the few that she does mention. But the point about the way to understand the way conceptuality, so I don't know how much she goes into it here, but conceptuality, the way it functions is totally fascinating, I tell you. And this, of course, has to come from the yogi's experience. You know, this is not evident by looking at the brain. You can't see this. So conceptuality is the way they say that conceptuality works. It only cognizes things in a negating way. So please listen to this. It's so fascinating. Even just you see an apple. There's an apple on the table. Eye consciousness sees the shape and color. Instantaneously, your mental consciousness is accessed. And listen to this. This is what happens with every single conceptual cognition we have. Every single, and it works, you know, as Lama Yeshe said in Mahamudra, the mental consciousness is more brilliant than even scientific instruments. And I mean, that's when you really can begin to see it. So what happens is you say, oh, there's an apple. But your eye consciousness is simply seeing shape and color. What your mental consciousness does automatically, the conceptuality level, it brings up in your mind every single object that you've ever known that is not an apple. And that's referred to as non-apple. And then what it does is eliminate every one of those. And the only one left standing, listen to this, is a non-apple. Well, guess what a non-apple refers to? The apple. That's how conceptuality works. It is so abstract. It is so fascinating. And of course, we don't think that. We just think we see an apple, you know, but we don't. So what the main point they talk about, the conceptuality level of mental consciousness, which is the level we function at, we don't have a direct cognition at all of anything. We see things in this negating way. And then we have a mental, all we see is a mental image of an apple. You don't cognize an apple directly at all. The eye consciousness sees shape and color, but apple is a concept. It's something we have made up, we have learned. And it's known in this negating way as a non-apple. Everything else has been eliminated, and all that's in the millionth of a second. It doesn't take you a while. Your brain, I mean, we're not talking the brain, your mental consciousness is sort of as grinding slowly, and you've sort of lost your memory. I wonder what that is. It's maybe working more slow, but normally right there in a trillionth of a second, apple, you know. But how the mental consciousness cognizes at this level of conceptuality, this gross level, is as a negating, as a negative object, and it only sees a mental image. So we don't have a direct cognition of an apple at all, or anything, when it's conceptuality. I mean, they're the words for it. It's very fascinating. So that's enough for how it functions, you know, in the epistemological model. Geshe Tashi talks more about it. It's very interesting. It's very delicious. And he goes into more detail than TY does. But I think from terms of this course, you use TY, what she's covered, as our basis, you know. So what we started looking at last week was some of these mental factors. And the first group, as we look into TY's notes, the first group are called there's this group of 6 in these 51. They're divided into, like we discussed last week briefly. I was using Geshe Tashi's book, but essentially it's the same. And TY starts talking about it, I think, on page 46, page 46. So the first lot, so there are probably 51, there are thousands more. The first group are called the ever-present, or the ever-present, or always present, or omnipresent state. And there's 5 of these, and we discussed these last week. And again, what's interesting, it doesn't state this. I think, yeah, they're not negative and they're not positive. There's only 3 categories, remember: negative, positive, and neutral. Neutral doesn't mean not important. Neutral means neither negative nor positive. And that's why you've got to get used to this Buddhist view of what negative or neurotic or deluded means, because we don't use this view in modern psychology. And the delusions are these, they're neurotic, they're eye-based, they're fear-based, they're miserable, they're horrible, and they distort. They distort, you know. From that point of view, they're not valid. Not in a moralistic way, not in a fundamentalist way, but in a very practical way. Then you've got the virtuous states of mind, and we're going to go to a list of those in a minute. But here, this first lot, the 5 always present mental factors we discussed last week, they are literally neither negative nor virtuous. You've got to get the meaning of this, but they're totally, fundamentally crucial and necessary states of mind. And without these, any one of these missing, you'd be a mad person. So we discussed last week, feeling. This is a fascinating one. You know, feeling, as I said last week, it's referring to a state of mind that's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And what's another word for pleasant? Happy. So our problem is when we say happiness, because we're so addicted to the cause of it being outside there, the cause of it being that delicious chocolate cake on the plate, we actually think happiness is the chocolate cake. When you have memories of happiness, and tell me about your happiness, Rabina, what will I do? I will tell you the event, won't I? This is a really powerful point. TY doesn't say it like this. You have to remember this, so it's powerful. We talk about the event, don't we? But that happiness is not an event. That's absurd. Happiness is a state of mind, people. And it's one of the 3 kinds of feeling. And there's always, ever present, they're there every millisecond. There's ever a millisecond of your mind functioning. There's not either a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. So this is where, you know, they're neither good nor bad, But we know we badly want the happy ones, and that's attachment's job. We haven't got to attachment yet, you know. This is its job. The junkie in us is to get the object that we are convinced such that when we have contact with it, it will trigger a happy feeling. So happy feelings is the first. Feelings is the first. And there's always going to be some kind of happy, unhappy, or neutral. The second one is called, as we discussed, discrimination or discernment. And without this, you'd be insane. It's happening every millisecond. It's constantly working. It's a conceptual state of mind, and it's continually distinguishing between this and that every millisecond. This shape, color, this every second you're seeing things, hearing things, touching, smelling, tasting, and thinking. It's constantly discriminating. Now, clearly, this is a vital state of mind in your practice, isn't it? Because if you can't distinguish between a positive thought and a negative thought, you cannot practice Dharma. It's impossible. One of the key job of being a Buddhist is to distinguish between negative and positive thoughts. So that's the job of discrimination. The third is called intention. This is so enormous. This one is huge. It's not meaning positive motivation. It's not meaning motivation. We have these two words. Intention is the most primordial, fundamental, continuously there, and it's virtually the actual meaning of the word karma. This topic is not karma here, but this is a clear way that mind functions, because mind creates karma. So intention, karma, I've heard that it means something like action. Well, every millisecond there's intention. There's never a second there's not intention. And basically intention is the verb volition. We discussed this. I will. I will. Without that, you won't lift a finger. So every millisecond of what any sentient being does in any per second, per day, is driven by intention. This is an utter surprise to us because we don't think we have intention at all. We just think we're just driven by habit, and we are indeed. But there's always intention there. And that's the real meaning of karma, mental action. Without intention, there cannot follow an action of body or speech. Not possible. So it shows how ignorant we are. It shows how we don't notice. We're just not aware of our mind, which is exactly what we have to learn to do. So we can start to be in charge of it. Another state of mind that comes is called contact. It's just this bare bones, you know. You got eye consciousness, there's a cake on the plate, you know, then a pleasant, then these all these little things take over. The feeling comes up, the discernment, what it is, intention, and then, you know, before you know it, boom, you know, the cake. And contact, you make the contact, and then attention. And I think this is an order of how they function, frankly. You'll read the notes. This is 47, TY's notes. So feeling is the experience of pleasure, pain, or indifference. Discernment distinguishes this one from another. Intention directs you to it. And then contact, you make the contact between your mind and the object, and then attention, you home in, and now you pay attention. All this is happening every millisecond, so fast you can't believe it. Scientific instruments could not track this. This is because we've been sentient beings for eons in samsara, so we're well practiced, okay? And you can be a monkey, a psychopath, or a saint, and these five are working, and they're neither negative nor positive. So clearly, once your motivation is virtuous, then you use these states of mind to help you practice, you know. Then you've got the five they call the object ascertaining. I think Jeffrey Hopkins uses some different terminology. Maybe she's using Jeffrey Hopkins, and that's the biggest problem in all the different translations. Many people use different translations, and it's really hard unless you know the Tibetan which one they're referring to, you know. So here there are these, next lot are these five object ascertaining. So one is aspiration. It focuses on the object and takes a strong interest in it, and this is neither negative nor positive, remember. Appreciation is occurring when the object's qualities are seen to be of value, and so stabilizes the mind to appreciate it, and you don't wander from it. All these are working together, these many states of mind. Mindfulness, or another term, I think I used one last week, it's really confusing, this word mindfulness, so please hear it properly. The way it's called in the West, it's got all these bells and whistles on it, you know, and it's almost like its own religion now, but it's just one tiny bare bones part of our mind and its specific function. It's like short-term memory, if you like, but the way they say it is quite interesting. It continues to bring the mind back to the object. So you know perfectly well, if you're trying to concentrate on making a cake, and you're so distracted because your boyfriend's shouting at you, the dog's yelling or whatever, you keep rushing off, your mind wanders away. So every time you bring it back, that's the function of that mindfulness. So of course, it's fundamental in its development, and it leads to the next one, concentration. I mean, she calls it meditative. I don't know where that comes from. It doesn't matter. But samadhi in Tibetan is the ability for the mind to stay on something. So mindfulness is the greatest thing that helps you do that. So in the process of getting single-pointed concentration, in the very beginning, the main one you got to work on is mindfulness, because the mind keeps rushing off. We all know that. So you got to the part of your mind that goes back to the object, that's mindfulness. And then eventually, when that's stabilized, as you get advanced, that leads to concentration, where you are on the object, staying on the object. That's the next one. And then you've got, that's the 5 ascertaining. I'm not going to mention the next 4. They're called variables, sleep and regret, but I'm not going to discuss those. You can read those if you like. Very welcome. Then they've got this next lot. This is now the 20. You've got the 3 root delusions: attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Then on the basis of this, you've got these 20, a list of 20 secondary delusions, they call them. There's the main delusions and then the secondary delusions, and they all branch off into those 3. So here on page 54, we'll just mention briefly. But before that, she mentions there are various things that, what does she call it here? They talk about, yeah. So, oh, what's this? What's this mean? Oh, never mind that. Okay, so then the list of these delusions from, she calls it attraction, but I suppose it's simply attachment. So there's there are 3 of these that they talk about that come as that are branched, they're rooted in attachment. So in a sense, they're really just stronger, they're more strong expressions of attachment, it seems to me. So page 54. So one is called avarice. I mean, it's clearly just, you can be attached to your possessions, but if you're really greedy, you don't want to give them away, you're very mean, you're miserly. It's like an extreme example of attachment, isn't it? But it can be precise. We can call it avarice, clinging to your things, not want to give away. With that one, we really understand. So this one called self-satisfaction. It seems, I mean, you could argue that it's called pride. I don't know if it is called pride in other lists, but she calls it self-satisfaction. Let me see what Geshe Tashi calls it. I think it's called pride, frankly. Maybe we don't like that word in our culture. We're so proud we don't like the word. We want to call it something sweeter. This is how we are. Our culture is very proud, I would suggest. Let me see what Geshe Tashi says. Geshe Tashi goes into more detail about the epistemological model, and it's really worthwhile reading, I promise you. It's an excellent book. You can get it on the digital, you can get it downloaded, buy it on Kindle or something. He goes into much more detail. It's very fascinating. I'm trying to find, I'm sorry, I don't want to waste your time. Where's his mental states, compassion? I don't know where it all is. Positive, negative, where are we? I'm sure it's called that. Non-attachment. No, the third lot. Wholesome. He's got his own way of talking about all the wholesome ones. I can't find those delusions. Where are they? Okay, here we go. His book is so helpful. I can't. Here they go. Here they come. And he puts them in different zones. He obviously puts the more extreme ones and the more, attachment, aversion, and the third one is God, look at it, it's going to be confusing. Individual mental factors. He's got a different way of presenting them all. I get a bit confused. Derivative. What's he talking about here? I just don't understand it. I can't find his list. I'm sorry. I can't find his list. He goes into more about anger, equanimity. I can't work it out. It's too confusing. I haven't found the right chapter. Let me look at another book. I'm pretty sure it means that. This derivative one. Mind, see what Geshe Rabton says. Okay, yeah, anger. There's another list called the 6 root delusions, the 6 root delusions. And I don't know why TY doesn't go into this. Attachment, anger, pride, ignorance, deluded views, and what's this next lot? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then doubt. I don't know, I'm confused. Forget the 6, all right? I'm not going to go about the 6. But pride has to be one of these derivative ones. It has to be. She calls it, what self, what does she call it? Self something. Well, let's go by what she says, okay? Because if you're going to have questions, you're going to have to use TY's notes. Sorry, my iPad can only look at one book at a time. It's most frustrating. Here we go. It has to be pride. Yeah, I mean, if pride, remember the key function of a delusion is it exaggerates. It exaggerates. So this is interesting. We might never think we have pride, but look at the flip side. We love to admit to low self-esteem. So, but the thing is, that's interesting. We would never have low self-esteem, and it doesn't talk about that here. So I'm sending you off into directions, but it's out of interest to have it. That if you didn't have pride, so if you feel, you see, one of the things is when you learn to recognize your main delusions, one of the ways of doing that, this is very interesting. It doesn't talk about this here, but you listen to this, is you see the way you suffer in your life. So if you suffer from pride, if that's one of your main delusions, and it can be, you're always being incredibly injured. You feel so offended by people. It's a really painful feeling of not being seen as you are, and of being seen as less, and of being offended and insulted. And it's so painful. I think that's a common way we all suffer. So then we get low self-esteem. In other words, pride is an overinflated sense of who you think you are. And then low self-esteem is an underinflated, is like a deflated sense of who you are. And if you didn't have pride, you would not have that. It's really powerful. This comes in a later list, I think, but it's really good to look at this. So I think her self-satisfaction is pride. The third one she calls is excitement, which is how they talk when you try to do single-pointed concentration. It's an extension of attachment when the mind just goes completely berserk, no, uncontrolled, completely out of control. This we are very familiar with, when the mind completely distracts us, and it's a function of attachment. When you sort of make up all the stories and exaggerate and this and this and this, and you go nuts, you know. And then from aversion they call it wrath. It just means very strong anger. That's all, you know, is the wish to cause harm. I mean, you can see anger is the basis. And look at the world, and you can see from anger, then people want to harm each other. Not everybody who has anger wants to harm. So clearly that's an extension of anger. It's rooted in it. And it's like they call it wrath. I mean, God knows what that word is, why they call it that. It's strong, it's wanting to harm somebody, you know. And vengeance, that's a very clear one, is wanting to get back at somebody. You see, everybody might have aversion, but you do not have vengeance. You don't have this wish to harm people. You can see the suffering in the world. You see, when we do our psychological analysis of the world, who would ever say that anger is the main problem? We would never say that. It seems too simple, doesn't it? Because we're so familiar, we're so addicted to trying to see what happened to that person when they were a child. We think that's the main cause of why this person's crazy. We always keep looking at the events and the situation and the background. Buddha's view is a very direct one. He looks directly at the mind itself. It's actually really quite simple, but we make it complicated. Anger is anger is anger. I don't care if your father raped you or if you know, or not. Your anger is your anger. And this is the key point when we learn about karma, that this anger comes with you from the past. Your father did not cause you to be angry. His action triggered the anger that is already there. This is a fundamental point you have to understand in this Buddhist view of karma, because as you know, the Buddhist view of the mind, because you come into this life programmed with your own mind. There's no such thing in Buddhism as these qualities coming from your parents. It's a bizarre idea in Buddhism. It doesn't mean they don't affect you. Your father did abuse you, no argument, but he did not cause directly your anger. Your anger is the fruit of your tendency to be angry. And why do you have a tendency to be angry? Because you were angry before. And why were you angry before? Because you have a tendency to be angry. And you keep tracking that back to the first second of conception, and you track your mind back to the previous moment of your mind. And you're going to find that you brought into your life, this life, you came with your tendency to be angry. Mind can only cause more states of mind, you know. This is fundamental. We'll go into this when we talk about karma. So we've got these expressions of anger, and you can see in the planet, that's why the problems happen. Why do you think people drop bombs and murder and harm and rape and kill? The habit of anger and vengeance and all these other things. You know, it's clear. It's clear. It's clear. And look at the torture of that if you can't give up that anger and you want the person to suffer, and then you want to actually cause them suffering yourself, or you have revenge. You can see these are the bitterest states of mind, you know, all coming from anger. It's so obvious, you know. Also spite. I mean, you can see all these words, they're so well, you know, following on from this wrath or vengeance. Vengeance is a better word for it, is the intention to, like, it's usually especially from harsh speech. Another one, the list here, it's a bit lost how it's typed. I'm sorry, there's something wrong. This is surprising to us. Envy or jealousy. Who would have thought that comes from anger? But that's what they say. It's rooted in anger. Of course, they all come from attachment. You could argue like that. But jealousy is you're furious that that person is happy. How dare they be happy, you know? Jealousy is very interesting. You look at these, hear these words and look at these simple definitions, but look into your mind, you know? Envy or jealousy is definitely, if it feels like it's related to attachment directly, but it's directly it's rooted in aversion, in anger, which is very fascinating, isn't it? But look into that. So here, these seem to be more from speech. I mean, they say spite is following on from this vengeance, is the intention to use harsh speech against someone. Here it says envy comes from attachment, but it's under the list of anger. It's under the list of anger. Cruelty is the wish to denigrate or to slight others, arising from malice. I mean, there's so many words you can use. And of course, in the Buddhist view, each of these terms has got a very specific definition. But the trouble is everybody uses different terminology. So it's hard to see what they're talking about, you know. And then she calls it confusion, but the general word is ignorance. And there are different levels of this ignorance. You know, there is the root ignorance, the root delusion that is ignorant about how things exist ultimately. And it gives rise to various other kinds of ignorance, you know. So from here, one of the functions of this ignorance is like a stupidity. Confusion, she calls it. Some of them call them that. So there's 6 or 7 that come from this in this list of 20. Concealment is the wish to hide one's negative qualities, especially from someone who points out your faults. I mean, we all have that. Who can stand to admit to our faults? It's very, very painful, especially if someone points them out. You know, we do not want this. And that can be a very strong quality. In general, not wanting other people to see you, you know, not wanting other people. We'll do everything in our power to present ourselves in a certain way and do everything to hide our negative qualities. It's because it's so painful to be criticized. We can see that. Concealment. Dullness is very clear. It's kind of just very kind of not like depressed, I don't think. Maybe no, depression, they don't mention it, but depression is really internalized aversion, you know, that over exaggerates the ugliness of everything, and particularly yourself as well. Dullness is just kind of thick and heavy, you know, listless. Maybe you could call it boredom, I don't know. Faithlessness is kind of a strange one, isn't it? We don't think of having faith. As soon as we say have faith, it sounds like religion, doesn't it? But it's a very good quality that they talk about in Buddhist psychology. Faith, I mean, you know, a better word might be trust. We understand the word trust. If you've got a good doctor, you don't know anything about medicine, but you trust that person. You have faith in that person, not because they look cute, but because you've done your research, you know. It's a really important quality. Until you got direct cognition of something, you know, until you learn medicine as well, you've got to have faith in somebody, but you've got to trust them, not because they're cute, but because you've done your due diligence. So faith is an important quality in Buddhism, and it comes from checking up, you know, and it comes before you have the direct cognition yourself. So is the opposite of faith, bringing about a lack of belief and respect for those things that are valid, such as karma. So, I mean, this is a hard one because, I mean, karma, you know, is fundamental to the whole Buddhist view of the universe. So how do you, you know, it's something very interesting here. There's a way they talk about the intellect, the cognitive process we go through gradually from ignorance to direct wisdom, something like that. So there's a series of steps. Let me just mention, it's kind of interesting. Let's say you use the simple example of you've never heard of acupuncture in your whole life. So the first response is what they call wrong view. That's listed here in one of the 6 root delusions. Wrong view. Don't be ridiculous. There's no such thing as acupuncture. I mean, look at all the people now, you can hear it. It's a very fundamentalist kind of mind. You know, if you think of people now with all their conspiracy theories and believing that, you know, whatever the people, very fundamentalist, you know, it's a fundamentalist, very rigid view of it's a really strong function of ignorance, and that you believe in something that's total nonsense. But basically in relation to, let's say, acupuncture, using the simple, ordinary worldly example, your first response, because you've never heard of it before, and you hear about it and you think it's totally ridiculous, because you've only ever heard about allopathic medicine, that's been your culture, and you immediately go, don't be ridiculous, not possible. That's called wrong view. Okay, now let's say you've got an open mind and you're prepared to look at it, so you start hearing about acupuncture, and gradually your wrong view begins to shake a little bit, not just because based on a feeling, but because you're starting to do some market research. So then you gradually tend toward, this is the next step, you tend to have doubt tending towards the wrong view. You go, oh, acupuncture, maybe it's true. No. But you keep searching, you keep researching, you keep studying, and now your doubt moves to become doubt tending towards the right view, because you're getting more knowledge now. Your wrong view is shaking. You now have doubt. And doubt is a very powerful state of mind. It's listed here somewhere as one of the delusions. Doubt is a really powerful suffering for many people. And you think about this, how do you conquer doubt? In this kind of little scenario here, going from wrong view to doubt, the only way to conquer doubt is to use logic and intelligence. The only way to have doubt, to conquer doubt about acupuncture, and I'm just talking about acupuncture here, something that does exist, you know, you have to analyze it, not just cross your fingers and force yourself to believe it. That's what we often do. Oh, I like the sound of acupuncture, I think I'll believe in it. That's ridiculous. That's not valid. That's too unstable, too emotional. What you got to do is look into the facts. Now you come to a very stable, what they call belief. But we tend to think belief is blind. We use it like that in our different religions, you know, blind belief. Well, for the Buddha, that's complete stupidity. It's just idiocy. There's no benefit in having blind belief. Belief is a valid state of mind, like faith, if you like, but it's based on intelligence. So, you know, you could have heard about acupuncture. You've spoken to people who've experienced acupuncture. You read about it online. You listen to the history of it, and you now have confidence. But it's belief, but not just blind. It's really important. This entire process involves you investigating, using your noggin, you know. Eventually, you're going to have what they call, I think, inferential certainty. Now, this is really advanced. This is still conceptual. All this is a still conceptual process. It's still not direct cognition, direct, valid, direct cognition of something. It's still inferential, but it's powerful because you've got logical reasons now. In fact, at the level of this inferential certainty, you could even, I think that would imply here, using acupuncture as our example, you'd have all the knowledge about acupuncture. You could even tell somebody about all the meridians, but you haven't had direct experience yet. But this is powerful. And this is very much exactly the process we go through in going from wrong view to direct perception of emptiness, direct perception of karma, direct perception of whatever it is that we're trying to get direct perception of. You go through these different stages, you know. And eventually direct perception, inferential certainty leads to direct perception when you actually do it yourself. You know, so it's just an analogy, but it's a really powerful process. And that's the process we're going through. So all of it implies using your intelligence, counteracting the delusions, counteracting wrong view, moving forward continuously. But the crucial point here about conceptuality, which is what we're describing here, all these mental factors, they're not direct cognition. They're not direct perception of something, which is pretty abstract to us because we can't imagine anything other than conceptuality, quite frankly. Because the whole way discussing about how conceptuality is still knowledge only about something, that's all coming from this understanding of the great yogis and the Buddha's view that you've got the ability at a subtle level of mind based on single pointed concentration to have eventually direct perception of something. That's when you've got the actual knowledge of it. You know, but right now we live at the level of conceptuality. So that's what's interesting. Among the conceptual states of mind, all these mental factors, there are some that are totally wrong not even valid in any way, like attachment or anger. And there are some that are valid, like faith, but they're still both not completely proper cognitions until we've got direct perception. It's a way of putting it, you know. So now looking at these three, the ones that come from this ignorance: concealment, dullness, faithlessness, laziness. I mean, laziness really, I mean, it's kind of rooted in attachment, but as she says here, occurs when strongly holding an object of attachment, you lose the wish to engage in constructive activities. I mean, that is what laziness is, not getting out of our comfort zone, you know. And it says here that it's rooted in ignorance, this confusion she talks about. And the other one is forgetfulness, which is the exact opposite of mindfulness. Mindfulness is remembering something moment by moment, and forgetfulness is forgetting things moment by moment, because the mind is always distracted. And then one's called inattention, is a lack of awareness of one's own body, speech, and mind, and leading to a state of carelessness. So not even noticing what you're thinking and doing. And that's really common, you know. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 that are rooted in ignorance. 1, 2, 3, 4 rooted in anger, and 3 rooted in attachment. These 20 secondary delusions, as they're called, you know. So any questions, folks? This is so brief, and all this is so brief. But anyway, are there any questions? In the end, I want you, the detail, yeah, I want you to get this general idea of mind, not physical, 2 levels of cognition, sensory and mental, as well as the perception and conception, and how conception works in a very artificial way, in a very negating way. It's conceptual, it's stories about things. And then within all those stories, there are some that are valid, some that are ridiculous, and some that are neutral. That's the general kind of model here, okay? So any questions, please? You need to ask me some questions.
Please feel free to raise your hand, or yes, or put your question in the box. I see we have Mark here has a question. His
Good,
hand
Mark, yeah. So back to that point that you mentioned, that Venerable George mentioned, Mark. What was that point again?
Oh, it was with Don, and I
Sorry, Don. What was the point you said?
I made a mistake. I misheard him. I asked the 3 poisons, and he said that ignorance was an affliction, and the first 2 were mental factors, and I was wrong. I misheard.
Yes.
He said they're both.
Yes.
They're both
That's right.
mental. Yeah.
Exactly.
But you just said today that the 5 omnipresent mental factors,
Yes,
and last week you used the fingers grasping the thermos, right? Last week you gave the example of the thermos. You were holding your thermos last week, and you said the 5 omnipresent mental factors are grasping the thermos. They're always present. Remember?
I don't know. I don't think I meant to say that. That's not what I meant at all. I'm sorry.
Well, I probably misheard. But anyway, you said the 5 omnipresent. They're always there. The 5.
Yes, always there.
So the secondary, are they also always there? I mean,
absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Even the always, I mean, effectively, Geshe Tashi says in the second lot, the always, the object ascertaining, they don't say they're always present, but as he says, he feels, and he said that in his book, that they probably are there most of the time, but the others absolutely are not always present. Oh my God, no, that'd be a nightmare if they were.
Because you're saying, like, as far as time goes, like the 5 they're happening imperceptibly. They're happening like in microseconds.
That's right, exactly, continuously there.
And so, but the secondary delusions, like, to put it as a metaphor with time, like how are they, you know?
Well, I mean, you don't always have anger. Your mind for sure at this moment might have no anger in it. So that means it's not possible for anger to be always present, or for the vengeance to be always present. That would be, I mean, if you're a complete psychopath, seriously mentally ill, you might say they're always present, but even then you can't say they would be, because if you're sleeping, you might not have any anger, even if you're a psychopath. Whereas as long as your mind is existing, those 5 are existing. You couldn't have a proper cognition of anything, positive or negative, if those 5 weren't there.
Okay.
You see, they're much more, they're so primordial.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. They're deeper, the secondary affliction.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And so this is why I think Geshe Tashi, in his commentary, he's made up his own trip. He's called some the first zone, the second zone, the third zone, which is really quite helpful because he's showing them at the levels of intensity and subtlety, which is very helpful actually. It's quite a helpful book to read. Buddhist Psychology by Geshe Tashi. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Who else? Tara.
I don't see anybody's hand raised, but we have a Linda who's asked a question in the chat box.
Please
It's
do, yes.
last week. Is it okay to ask?
Please go ahead, yes.
She asked whether one main mind could operate at once. And that's her question.
More than one. It was from
One
last
main
week.
mind could
Thanks.
operate as once.
I don't understand the question, darling. I'm so sorry, Linda.
It was from last week, whether more than one main mind could operate at once, at the same time. We had a debate about it a little bit.
Oh, did you? I think main mind is operating all the time. And I think can the eye consciousness and ear consciousness be functioning at the same time? That's what you're asking, because there are 6 main minds. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know if TY discusses it in there, but I've heard that you can't. I've heard that there has to be one, then it looks like it's all the same happening, but apparently not, I've heard, unless you're a high yogi, apparently not. It seems almost like they're all at the same time, but or even these other mental factors, sometimes they can't be all running at the same time. It seems like it. It seems they can't. But I can't give you more information than that. And thank you. It's a really good point, Linda. But the experience we have would feel like they are, but they're all so super fast. But apparently not. I've heard that. What else, people?
Okay, anyone else? Samuel has a question.
Shmuel, yes.
Yes, I have a question. You said that attachment is a mind that exaggerates the delicious parts of an object.
Yes, exactly.
Now, does that mean that wealth, fame, and beauty is really delicious and not the suffering of change?
Oh, no, it is definitely the suffering of change. It is definitely the suffering of change. But what attachment does is exaggerate. I mean, it's the suffering of change because you've exaggerated the deliciousness. But if you know very well, if you keep eating that chocolate cake that your attachment is excited about, it will change inexorably into something repulsive. And the attachment will turn into aversion, because now after 7 pieces of cake, it looks disgusting, doesn't it? So that's the point. It proves the suffering of change. If there were no attachment, you would have given up the suffering of change. Well, can you understand? Am I expressing properly? Are you hearing me?
Yes, I hear.
So by definition, the suffering of change is caused by buying into attachment. When you've given up attachment, you have given up the suffering of change. Literally.
So you could say that attachment exaggerates what seems as delicious, that it's not
That's the
really
point. There's
delicious.
nothing inherently delicious. That's the whole point. When you get to emptiness, you realize that there's no intrinsic delicious cake at all. That attachment is an additive. Attachment is an exaggeration. It embellishes. It adds on to, Lama Zopa says, all the delusions decorate on top of what does exist, layers upon layers of qualities that don't exist there. That's the key point about the delusions, Shmuel. When we finally rid the mind of all emptiness, as Lama Zopa says, when you realize the emptiness of delicious chocolate cake, you've given up attachment, you've given up all the other delusions. And when you realize the true nature of the chocolate cake, it's as if there's no chocolate cake, but there is a chocolate cake. But what does exist is so subtle, it's as if it doesn't exist. This is how they. So all the delusions are these embellishments, and they're like layers and layers that we. And so getting rid of the delusions is you're removing those layers until eventually you removed even the subtlest delusion, which believes there's an intrinsic chocolate cake. Then you're in touch with actual reality. Do you understand? Yeah, good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 more people, but first it would be Stina.
Yes, good. Please, Stina, talk to me, darling.
Yes. You mentioned that the mind cognizes by a way of negation, like the apple example.
Okay, to be precise again, you've got consciousness in general. You have sensory consciousness and you have mental consciousness. In the mental consciousness, you have two ways of functioning. The most advanced one, which is perception, only when you're virtually a yogi. So the level we live at in mental consciousness is conceptuality. Conceptuality cognizes in a negating way, in this weird, bizarre way that it apprehends an object. You see the apple, you see the shape and color, mental consciousness kicks in, conceptuality kicks in, it negates and every single non-apple, and then it ends up with you cognizing the phenomenon called non-apple, which of course equals apple. So it's a completely negating abstract way of cognition. But of course we don't realize that because we're so overwhelmed by the sensory consciousness and we don't see this subtle process going on.
No, because I mean, in my limited experience, it doesn't. I mean, you see an apple and there's the apple. How do we know that the conceptuality goes through all this?
By being a yogi, and I mean, with using the microscope of your own mind in single pointed concentration and seeing it directly, Stina. That's what you've got to do. This is the theory coming from the direct experience of the Buddha and the yogis who've seen this directly. In other words, if you read some neuroscientific reports, you ask the question, how have they seen this with their microscope? Well, here we're talking about the inner microscope, single pointed concentration, this laser-like brilliant state of mind at a subtlest level where you can actually see all this working. We can't possibly see it at this gross level we exist now. You see my point?
Yes. I'd also like to ask, I'm not even sure I can say the word, epistemologically.
Yes, exactly.
Can you explain this?
I think it's a study of knowledge, of how we know things generally. So here, very specifically, this is why the Buddhist epistemological model is so utterly fascinating, absolutely fascinating. The way we cognize things, the way we know things, how we know things. It's totally fascinating to study it. And it's really quite abstract and quite subtle and quite fascinating. And we're just touching on the grossest level of it, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we again have two more, but first would be Rasham.
Yes, darling. Talk to me, Rasham.
So venerable.
Yes.
When we talk about attachment, we're talking about attachment to pleasant things, right? But what about things like attachment to fear, to this whole thing of I am right, those kind of things we attach to.
Exactly. No, I understand. So the grossest level of attachment, the grossest level of all these delusions, especially attachment and aversion, is in relation to the objects of the senses. That's the very gross and evident level. So then clearly it's got these subtler levels of attachment. There are many layers and layers of attachment. And it's actually very linked to the feeling of I. Of course it is. So one of the major ways we experience attachment is attached to our views. I'm right, you're wrong. That's clear. We're attached to our comfort. We're attached to, we're attached to getting what we want. I mean, this is primordially deep inside us. We can see this. And then the millisecond, I mean, they often refer, and I say this constantly, that aversion or anger is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. It's multifaceted, this attachment, but the grossest level of it is for the objects of the senses. So the attachment over-exaggerates the deliciousness of the boyfriend. Oh, we can over-exaggerate the deliciousness of our own body if we've got a lot of vanity, or if we have aversion for our body, which is very typical, we over-exaggerate our ugliness. That's pretty clear. Do you understand? Thank you. Yes, Wolfgang.
Yes.
Are you back in Germany, Wolfgang?
Yes, I'm back in Germany. Thank you.
And are you happy there? It's good. All things are working well.
Like everything has advantages and disadvantages.
There you go. Your children have been surprised. Little American.
Yeah. For the children, it's tough. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
He's got 5 boys. I think you got 5 boys, haven't you?
Just 4. Small family.
Oh, only 4. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
But they're adjusting, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
When Rubina, you mentioned that the moment of anger comes from a previous moment of anger. So my question is, what is really triggering a possible change out of this vicious cycle? How can you get out of it?
By having others, by accessing your other states of mind. That's why there's many states of mind. So the anger comes from previous moments of anger, but the stronger the anger is, the more likely you're not going to listen to these other parts of your mind. You're not going to listen to the wisdom that knows it's causing you suffering. You'll tell the wisdom to shut up and keep being angry. So we're going to have to pray and hope that as a base of our practice, we've got strength in the discrimination. We've got some recognition of good ethics. They are the other parts of your mind. And if they are strong, that's what enables you to change the anger. But if the anger is so strong, we can see this in the world, Wolfgang. You tell a person who's angry that they could change, they'll laugh at you because you just totally believe anger is the most strong habit. But we fortunately have other habits, and they're the ones we have to try and access and practice. You get my point?
Yeah, if a person is really angry, he has no chance. There's no possibility to change.
Yep. This is the tragedy, isn't it? This is very common. Even if we don't have very strong anger, when we really believe it's the other person's fault, we don't even want to hear that we could change the anger because we think, what do you mean I should change? He should change. So that's even the worst problem. We don't even think we should change. So to even begin to look into the anger or the mind and see that we can learn to change our mind, that's already pretty advanced, Wolfgang, because we're usually so addicted to the belief that the external world is the problem. So already seeing our mind is a pretty good thing. Do you understand?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, we have one in the chat box I can read. It is from Claudia asking, fear hides behind anger. And the question, do we have to look for the root of fear or only the root of anger?
I understand. Well, let's just do the Buddhist analysis of it. There are the 3 root delusions, and the primordial, the root, the fundamental one that drives everything, such that when that is uprooted by the realization of emptiness, then all the delusions crumble into nothing. So the root delusion is known simply as ignorance, known colloquially when it's talking about me as ego grasping. This is the primordial root. So at the depth of our being, there's this deepest assumption of a solid, concrete, real, separate, pointable, set in stone me. That's the root. So now that is absolutely, its nature is fear. When you my computer sometimes disappears. So I don't know why, God knows. So here I am on my iPad, okay? My iPad for some reason behaves nicely. Now I've got it's also running out of power. So let me stand it up properly. I can't, I have to hold it. Oh my God, I can't do it. Hang on.
Well, welcome back.
Here I am. I'm trying to get the Buddha in there. You want to see the Buddha, not just me. Hang on. Okay, I've got to hold it. So, okay, what were we saying? What was I saying?
How ignorance was the root behind.
Okay, good. Thank you. Rooted. Yeah. This is a really vital thing to understand. You've got to see Buddha as well. Come on, there you go. There's Buddha. Okay, that's better. So now, okay, this is really important to understand. You know, we kind of talk about, like you just said, anger is, you know, everything's coming from anger, but fear is this most primordial panic-stricken sense of I, which has been offended or attacked or insulted, and that's underneath all the delusions. Now listen, we say anger is like coming from fear, but have a look at anger itself. I mean, look at a person screaming, shouting, eyes wide, you know, weird words coming out of their mouth. It's actually completely, they're having a panic attack. It's not even, forget about being rooted in anger, rooted in fear. It is fear. Look at it, completely hysterical because the I has been offended. The I has been attacked. This is how we suffer so shockingly in our culture. That's why we all go mad. That's why we suffer in samsara. So beginning to loosen the grip of all the delusions loosens fear. We become more courageous, you know. So fear is the nature of all the delusions, guaranteed. Analyze it, you know. And that's how we suffer so terribly. This is why we suffer so terribly. So it's a good point, yes. So eventually, yes, you do get to the root, but you've got to look at the branches first. That's why the very first level of practice is control detachment, control anger, control vengeance, control all the grosser ones. And then we eventually get to the root, and that's where we start to realize emptiness. And that's when you cut all fear altogether. Absolutely. That's what's amazing. Next question, please, Tara.
Yes, and that would be our last question right now, unless anybody.
Okay.
It's
So the
about-
trouble is, if I'm using my iPad, I can't look at the text. So I'm going to have to, gosh, I don't know what to say. I mean, I haven't finished everything. I mean, there's so much more I should be saying in this course. I think this is, I mean, I think what I need to, I think the main things I want to get across is the main points, what the mind is, not physical. It's the sensory and concept, the sensory and mental. Among the mental, there's perception and conceptuality. Conceptuality is all the thousands of thoughts that we live in day-to-day life. Then I think use TY's text, go through those other states of mind. Once you get the general picture, then you can look at these different states of mind. She gives one sentence definitions of each one, and it's a really good point for you to go through those together to discuss them. But the bigger picture is so important, that we live at this level of conceptuality. This is very, very humbling when we realize it, you know, all these opinions we have, all these viewpoints we have. I mean, the one point I like to say when I use that example, I like my thermos. All your eyes are doing is seeing shape and color. That's it. But we come up with all these stories. Mark is divine. He is ugly. She is evil. He is good. This is that. Look at the complexity of the conceptual stories we have. They are all those mental factors. And if you think about it, even modern psychology says it's like 1,000 thoughts a second. Every one of those is a mental factor. It's so complex, so speedy, and it's so we have to unpack and unravel these conceptual stories. And the crucial point is to begin gradually distinguishing between the valid ones, the useful ones, like, you know, I mean, goes into that list of 11 virtues. We haven't even gone into those. And it seems an odd list. It doesn't mention the word love or compassion. They come later. But if you look at a valid concept, like, you know, a valid concept would be love. Love is a delight that someone is happy. It's a valid concept because it's rooted in dependent arising. But attachment is completely I-based, panic-stricken, miserable, distorted, exaggerated, and totally neurotic. That's the point, but that's the real essence. And when we learn to understand how the mind works, that the virtuous states of mind are reasonable and the deluded ones are cause us to be up a creek without a paddle, you know, completely the cause of our suffering. And then we live in all these conceptual stories 1,000 times, every second of the day, we've got these opinions about things. And we, of course, we are so attached to our opinions. We totally believe every opinion is a truth. So it doesn't, again, go much about this, and TY doesn't go into this. But when we realize that, you know, this is how Lama Zopa talks, that the delusions, what they do is, it's a wonderful saying, put this down, you know, that the delusions, all the neurotic states of mind, all the attachment, aversion, ignorance, you name them, all the others, you know, vengeance, all the heavy duty ones, whatever, they all exaggerate. And they, as Lama Zopa says, they decorate on top of what is there, layers upon layers of characteristics that aren't there. This is such a powerful way to put it. It's so sobering. So this is why one of the most powerful practices, even if you don't even label what's in your mind, when you hear yourself having some opinion, you know, that Mr. Trump or these conspiracy theorists, you shut your mouth, you listen, and you go, well, that's just an opinion, Rabina. That's my view. And where's it coming from? Is it an angry view? Is it a jealous view? Is it a vengeful view? Is it a jealous view? It's got a label, honeys, and it's either valid. If it's a virtue, it won't be miserable. If it's a virtue, it would say, well, poor Mr. Trump, he's suffering. I have compassion for him. That's a virtuous thought. You won't get upset. If it's like, how dare he do that? Who's he think he is? You know, it's coming from anger. Now, this is the other thing that's crucial. And this is not discussed by TY in there, but you listen to this. Let's say it's Mr. Trump. Just give an example. Okay, he's not there anymore, but he's still around, you know. Let's just say it's Mr. Trump. Give an example. And let's say we see that he did do something wrong. Let's just say he did, and we can prove it. That's not being angry. You've got to distinguish between seeing a fact. A fact is you see me kick the dog. That's not anger. That's a fact. Now that's one thing, but anger is on top of it. You then go, how dare Rabina kick the dog? Forget Mr. Trump. It's easier to talk about yourself. So giving up anger doesn't mean giving up, chucking the baby out with the bathwater and saying, oh, well, Rabina didn't kick the dog. That's absurd. She did kick the dog. That's a fact. That's not anger. Anger, you add on top of the facts. You add on top of the facts, you know. That's what we have to learn to distinguish between. And this we do not see, because we assume whatever I'm thinking is a fact. That's the killer. I know I'm angry, but I believe I'm right. Rabina's evil. Look at her. She kicked the dog. Rabina's evil is coming from your angry mind that's over-exaggerating Rabina's ugliness, you know? That's the thing we have to see. If you're attached to Rabina, attached to Mark, Mark is so divine. Mark is the cause of all my happiness. It's a complete distortion. It's a complete exaggeration. He might be a kind man. He might be good. He might be virtuous. But attachment adds on top of that. That's the key way that Rinpoche talks about how delusions function, how non-virtues function. They decorate on top of what already is there, layers upon layers of characteristics that aren't there. That's the way to see. When we can start to see this in our mind, we are practicing Dharma, I tell you. This is the function of the deluded mental factors, you know. And so identifying them all, the list of them is wonderful to look at. They're so precise. I mean, you could understand attachment and aversion at the deepest level. You'll have a great insight into your own mind. But then all these are the extra branches that come from it. And when you've got more precise analysis of your own mind, you're going to see these different ones, you know. And then the virtues the same. So I haven't even gone into the virtues, but have a look at that list and you can study and analyze those together, you know. So the fundamental point I want you to get is the way what the mind is, not physical. It's got your sensory consciousness, and to begin even to do this distinguishing between the sensory and the mental is a massively powerful job. My eye consciousness sees shape and color. That's it. Then the next millisecond, your mental consciousness comes up with a big story. Mark is divine. That cake is disgusting. From there on, the dramas happen. All these thousands of thoughts in the mind. And this is where the workshop is, as Lama Zopa says. We have to learn to unpack and unravel these thousands of conceptual stories, these thousands of mental factors. We've got to look at some of the neutral ones. I call the mechanics, like the intention, attention, feeling. Really, it's an incredible analysis to do of your own mind. Learn the theories. You've got the neutral ones, these always present, the ones that function when you're not looking at something, like the ascertaining ones. They're so helpful to look at and try and imagine how one day we'll be able to identify these thousands of states of mind. The best we can do now is learn the theories. And then the reason you want to learn about the always present, the reason you want to learn about those ascertaining, those ones, is so that you can use all these tools to know your mind, unpack and unravel your mind. That's the job to be done, you know. That's the main point for me to learn. So you've got to study these things together, please, in your discussions, and then whatever, learn the different ones and get a few examples of the good ones, a few examples of the bad ones, but get to know these three root ones. We haven't gone into detail. There's a list of 6 there, and there's quite a complicated list of wrong views and all these business. I haven't even gone into those, okay? Get the general picture. It's the most important thing. Then you've got an understanding of the mind from the Buddhist point of view, and then you can do the work, you know. How are we going for time? What is the time?
Yeah, we got about 21 after.
Oh, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
20 past. Yeah, okay. So anyway, I think, yeah, go on. So what else? Let me just get my, I'll see if I,
so if you, we want, if that is the conclusion of the teaching,
no, it's not yet. We've got 10 more minutes.
Well,
haven't we?
for tonight, okay.
We've got 10 more minutes. It's only 20 past, isn't it?
Okay, a few more minutes. We would tonight.
Got 10 more minutes, yeah, of course.
For you,
so then,
the
I mean,
mandala.
I'm just giving I want to get to the overview is important. The overview is important. The overview is important.
Okay.
And then you can add the details easily to it. And you need to study those things. I mean, we haven't gone into much detail. So are there more questions, please? I need you to ask me more questions because that's where it's most helpful.
Okay, does anyone have any questions, please? You may
Okay,
raise.
the key one I want you to understand, can you please, I need you to ask questions. Can you see this distinction? Can you see this model where we talk about there are those that are virtuous, valid, reasonable, that are not distorted. There are those that are ridiculous, distorted, and therefore not valid, the deluded ones. And the third lot, which I call mechanics, like intention, feeling, discrimination. Can you see how they are neither negative nor positive? I want to ask you that question. And if you have any doubts about this meaning, before we finish today, I want to clarify those doubts, because this is a crucial way to understand your mind. Can you see how some thought, like discrimination, is neither good nor bad? I mean, this is where mindfulness is so fascinating. If mindfulness is simply the ability to keep returning to the object, which leads to concentration, to stay on the object, then as Lama Zopa says, thieves need mindfulness. So stop, see, this is mindfulness, intention, attention. They're not good and they're not virtuous and non-virtuous. Now, this is the problem because we don't use these labels in our psychological models. You've got to understand the meaning of these. Then you'll understand these mechanics, which I call them. Then you'll understand how there can be a state of mind that's neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. We don't have that concept in our culture. So you've got to understand this one. It's crucial. Can you hear my point, please, people?
I have a question then.
Yeah, go on. What's your question?
Just what, I mean, based on what you said then, so to see how they are neither negative or positive, okay, these delusions, I guess wouldn't.
Sorry, what? Start again, what?
How you said, do we see how they are neither negative or positive?
Which ones am I giving the example of? Give an example of the ones I'm saying are neither negative nor positive.
For example, aversion, spite, or envy.
No. This is, I'm so happy, Tara. You completely misunderstood. I'm so happy you said that. That's exactly my point, darling. No, you just described a delusion. Sweetheart, you've got, Tara, you've got 3 categories.
Come on.
You have those that are deluded, non-virtuous, neurotic, negative, I-based, painful, crazy, and the cause of all suffering. You then have those that are valid, reasonable, virtuous, appropriate, positive, and that are the cause of your happiness. Too precisely. Can you hear my point? And the third category
is
neither negative nor positive. And they are, for example, concentration, intention, attention, feeling, discrimination. They are neither negative nor positive, but they are absolutely vital states of mind that you can't exist without. So that's why I'm saying this exact point, Tara, and I'm so happy you said that. This is the fundamental point that if you don't get, you don't understand the Buddhist psychological model. There are some that are neurotic, deluded, non-virtuous, the cause of pain. There are some that are valid, reasonable, virtuous, that are cause of happiness. And then there are that's why I call the third lot the mechanics of the mind. Intention is the mechanics, feeling, discrimination, a monkey, a murderer, a psychopath, a multi-murderer sniper needs good concentration, needs good mindfulness, needs good discrimination. Can you hear that point, Tara? Now.
Well, let me repeat because I get a little bit of a short memory issues going on. So these are the 3 categories of our mind. That's
what, darling? What?
These 3 categories, delusion.
It doesn't say this so explicitly in T.Y.'s count, but I'm saying it repeatedly since you've heard me since beginningless time, because it's a vital, crucial way to make the distinction between these, because there's only 3 categories of states of mind. Those that are neurotic, deluded, ridiculous.
Yeah,
those
3
that are
categories.
And the third lot, they call them neutral. But if I say neutral, you get confused and it sounds like they're not important. That's why I prefer to say they're the mechanics of the mind. So can you see how you can be a sniper, but have very good discrimination? You can distinguish between the people you want to kill. And so that discrimination is not a virtue and it's not a non-virtue. But you need it.
I remember that.
You need it to be a good sniper. You can be a meditator and have good discrimination, and you need it to be a meditator. So how you use it depends on whether you use it for good or bad. That's why that's what neutral means, not negative, not positive. And why we don't use these in our modern psychological model, positive, negative, sounds moralistic to us. So we've got to get used to this way of dividing. I'm so glad you brought it up, Tara, because I'm saying this repeatedly, but it's hard to hear it.
It is. Thank you. We have Sarah does have a question also.
Good. Okay, go. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, hi, hello, Van Gorbina. It's not so much a question. It's just to say that in all the years I've been studying with different people and looking at things, actually having it called mechanics has suddenly clicked.
Good, I'm happy. Yes, good. Right, good. That's it. Good. So I'm glad.
Thank you. It's just such a good term.
Good. Thank you, Sarah. That's perfect. That's wonderful. I know, because they don't, I mean, if you look at the text, the way they divide up, they emphasize different points, and you only deduce after a while these 3 categories, but I stress them continuously because it's an amazing way to divide the millions of thoughts in your mind. You've only got 3 categories. Those that are virtuous, those that are non-virtuous, and then the mechanics that make it all work. It's a really helpful way to put it. I agree with you, Sarah. And it's a very simple model. It's very simple. 3 categories. That's it. There's no 4th category.
Okay, we have one more person, then the follow-up in the chat box on
Good,
that.
good. Go on then.
Lola's asking, yes, so we need to develop the mechanics of the mind. It's kind of a question, or try to direct our mind to those.
Well, if you think about it, those 5 always present ones, you've got to grow those. You've got to grow mindfulness. You've got to grow the ability to keep bringing your mind. That's why you do concentration meditation. You've got to train mindfulness to keep coming back to the object. You've got to train your discrimination to know. So that's why if you can know you've got you've got attachment to Mark and you have love for Mark. Discrimination is the ability for you in your mind to go, that bit's attachment and that bit is love. Discrimination, you have to train it to be very sharp. So all these bits and pieces, it's like, and I use the hand, that's why Mark I misled with the hand. Your hand is just a hand. It's got 5 fingers, but they all do their job. Well, these intention, attention, discrimination, feeling, and the other one, they all do their jobs. So you've got to train those different parts of yourself to do their job best. So you can use all of them in the job of learning to lessen the delusions and grow the virtues and become a Buddha. That's the bigger point about the mind. Do we hear that? Good.
And we have Miriam with another.
Yes, Miriam. Yes, darling.
Hi, Venerable. I get the mechanics, discrimination, etc., etc. I don't get the feeling, though.
I know that's again. I'm glad you asked, darling. Let me talk about it. This is why, because you're like the rest of us. When we say feeling, we think of an emotion. We use another word called emotion, don't we? Do you understand?
Yeah.
And we'll think of an angry emotion and a happy and a jealous emotion. That's not the meaning here. This is a vital one to understand. It's very bare bones. Feeling, there's only 3 kinds. There's either a happy feeling,
yes,
an unhappy feeling, a neutral feeling. That's it. Then got nothing. Now, this is the point. So like right now, if I say I love Mark, I mean, that I have attachment for Mark. So then, because this is the thing, and I mean, yeah, we have to go into this in more detail. We probably will in the next courses. Don't worry about it. But it's like this, there's 3 things going on when I look at Mark. One, there's feeling involved, and I've got very pleasant feelings, yeah? And that's called happiness, sweetheart. That's Miriam. Another word for pleasant is happy. So happy feeling. I've definitely got a happy feeling. Why? Because I've got karma with this boy from past lives and then present because he's nice to me. So I've got 3 things going on. I mean, there's 23 things going on, but the 3 major ones. Attachment is in there, and that over-exaggerates Mark's deliciousness. Then I've got love for Mark, which is a virtue. I do want him to be happy, but it's polluted by the attachment, and I don't even see the difference. But they're like totally different states of mind, even just the love and attachment. Attachment is a delusion, it's neurotic, it's I-based, it's self-centered. Love is connected to others, it's altruistic, and it's valid. Even just these 2, it's a revelation to see the difference. So far, can you see those 2 different?
Yes.
The third thing is happening
now,
and this is the point, because we've got, you see, we all want happy feelings and we all don't want unhappy feelings. This is something that Buddha would even say is the basis of his entire path to enlightenment. Everybody wants happiness and nobody wants suffering. So because what's driving us, so attachment's job, this junkie in us, the junkie in us, this greedy, grasping, frantic attachment is hungry to get nice feelings. Now, there's nothing wrong with nice feelings. I mean, this is where we get confused. Happy feelings are not attachment. A happy feeling is something primordial and fundamental. It's simply the way we're constructed. But so then the attachment believes, this is a mistake, that contact with Mark is the cause of my happy feelings. So then
yes.
I manipulate Mark like crazy to keep getting him to do what I think I want, so I will get happy feelings. But basically what Buddha's saying is, I'm sorry, guys, that's samsara. What he's saying is, you know what, Rabina, I found some methods, honey child, for you to get such damned happy feelings, you won't even believe it. And this is his point, Miriam. Happy feelings are valid. Lama Yeshe used to joke and say, the more pleasure, the better. So pleasure, happy feeling, joy, bliss, you know, they are simply feelings. They're not non-virtuous and they're not virtuous. They're like mechanics. It's just the way we're constructed. But we are such junkies. We mix it with attachment. We think Mark is the cause of my happy feelings. But the fact is, Buddha says, no, Rabina, you guys think that happy feelings come from getting what attachment wants. No, happy feelings come from giving up attachment. So when you've given up attachment, jealousy, anger, neurosis, guess what? You'll only have happy feelings left. You'll only be joyful all the damn time. So happiness is not attachment, but we're such junkies and so ridiculous and neurotic and guilty. We think, oh, happy feeling, that sounds like a sin. But happy feeling is what we're trying to get. It's not negative and it's not positive. It's got nothing to do with an emotion. It's simply, you can have the most mild feelings and the most intense feeling, but there's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. We have to understand the meaning of this word feeling. Otherwise, we don't understand Buddha's teachings and the function of attachment. Are we communicating, Miriam?
To some extent, I get what you say all the way, but I'm still left with the feeling. And can I now add happy to the feeling? Is part of the mechanics.
The use of the word in Buddhist psychology, there are only the use of this word feeling is not referring to what we like an emotion. When you're angry, you feel an emotion, and we say we're having a feeling. That's not the meaning. Feeling is more fundamental, more bare bones. It's neither a negative nor a positive mental state. It's simply the way we're constructed, that every millisecond we either have a pleasant feeling, an unpleasant feeling, and forget the neutral, and they do exist, but we either have pleasant and unpleasant. So the whole of samsara is constructed based upon our wrong views that Mark is the cause of the happy ones, and then the ugly ex-boyfriend is the cause of the unhappy one. So we kill the ex-boyfriend, and we grasp at the pleasant. So this is the entirety of samsara. So understanding that Buddha's telling us, basically, I've found a method to get happy feelings all the time. So, and that's
dropping
when you're fully
the attachment.
developed. You're going to have completely blissful mind. You look at all these lamas, they're joyful all the time. And you know why? Because they no longer have delusions. They only have joy in their mind. And the other point is, virtuous states of mind bring happy feelings.
Yes.
So it's technical. Buddha's method for giving up unpleasant feelings, called suffering, is to give up delusions. Buddha's method for having happy feelings all the time is to practice virtues.
Practice virtues, yes.
Yeah. So feeling is a neutral state of. It's like a mechanic. It's a mechanical part of our mind.
Yeah, I got to sink more into it, but basically,
yes.
I got it.
This
but
is
I
vital.
need to.
You guys, this is the one. If you guys can understand these certain words, then you've got an understanding of where all this stuff that you're studying comes from, you know.
Awesome.
These are the main things I tell you.
Thank you.
Because we are so fundamentalist about happy feelings. We think it's a sin. We think we equate it with attachment. That's pathetic. You can't, that's why Lama Yeshe would try so hard to convey to us how happiness is the point. But we got so guilty. Oh, I can't be happy. The world is suffering. I've got to be miserable. We're ridiculous.
No.
And then Lama describes in his Mahamudra book, when we'll discuss meditation, we'll go into it. He describes the bliss, the joy, the rapture, the ecstasy. He uses these words, which are really, really, really happy feelings that we will get naturally by getting single point of concentration. We're almost embarrassed to hear these things. It sounds like naughty, you know, because we're so pathetic. We're so guilty. Do you understand? Are we communicating?
Yeah, I'm not pathetic, but I get your point.
I'm not talking about you, darling.
I'm kidding. I'm joking.
You know what I'm
it's
saying?
all good.
I'm not you. I'm not being personal, believe me.
No, I'm kidding. It's all good. Yeah,
Good,
I get it.
darling. Good.
Awesome. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
I'm so pleased. These are the questions I want. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm saying these things 1,000 times, but it takes us time to hear this, you know, this simple kind of very technical model, negative, positive, neutral, virtuous, non-virtuous, neutral, you know, it's crucial to get this point. Then suddenly the word you're reading will make sense to you.
Yeah, good.
So, darling, I think I've said enough. I hope. Get the overview and then just add the details. And you study these details together, you study them yourselves and just get a sense of it. But the key points are the ones I've made about the mind, you know. And there's so many more of these mental factors and so much more study that has to occur. That's why you've got to study more of this, but get the fundamentals clear, you know. It's so important. What do you think, Tara? What do you think, Nina? It's time to finish this one. What do you think?
Well, there are two
more questions
in the chat
Go on,
box.
what are they? What are the questions? Come on.
One is by Cyril. One moment.
Okay, go Cyril. Ask it.
Or I can read it. Why do we?
Please, whatever you think.
Why do we think that happy feelings come from attachment, getting what it wants, if happy feelings come from giving up attachments?
Yes, yes. Well, it's so hard. I mean, because for eons and eons of habit. Eons and eons of habit. I mean, that's why I use the example of always, this is where it's extra heavy when you get happy feelings from doing something negative. And this is where karma comes in. So I use that example of this little boy who was a fisherman. His mother said he was a fisherman all his life. A nice boy. He had many good qualities, but he got born in this life with a habit to kill. So he's 5 years old. He goes fishing for the first time. He sees that scenario, that millisecond, pleasant feelings arise. That millisecond, pleasant feelings arise. So the intensity of the pleasant feelings that arise in our mind are equal to the extent of the karmic habit. So he had the karmic habit to kill the poor boy. So he gets blissful feelings as soon as he sees fishing. Then the next trillionth of a second, attachment kicks in and paints a very delicious picture of fishing. And so then, of course, the logic is, I got good feelings by seeing fishing, and look at how divine it is, and I want more good feelings, so of course I'm going to keep killing fish. This is what keeps us paralyzed in samsara. This is the mechanics of it that keeps us paralyzed in samsara. Wrong views, basically, wrong analysis. And this is the tragedy. Are we communicating?
Yes.
So whereas another little boy, we can deduce he lived in vows of non-killing. This is why we're going to talk about vows when we get to karma. That he, when his mother, I repeat these stories 1,000 times over the last 25 years, you know, he as soon as his mother starts taking the lice out of his own head, he's 3 years old, he's crying with compassion. Mummy, leave them alone. It's their home. Don't hurt them. He was in tears of empathy for the lice in his own head. Because why? Because he practiced virtue in the past, and he comes into this life program with virtue from non-killing. This is very powerful, I tell you. So it's just wrong analysis. And it would be logical. I mean, if you, as you go fishing, you get a good feeling, nothing in the universe would tell you that fishing isn't the cause of that good feeling. It comes immediately afterwards. Why do you think it's so hard to give up boring old chocolate cake? As soon as we see chocolate cake, attachment exaggerates its deliciousness. We remember the good feeling from yesterday, so we naturally assume it comes from the cake. So we leap into the cake again. Of course, the tragedy is we forget that yesterday we ate 6 pieces again and vomited afterwards. So we very conveniently today forget the unpleasant feelings caused by the same damn cake as it caused the happy feelings, but we forget the unpleasant ones, and we're junkies and we run back to the cake hoping that it'll get happy this time. We've been doing it for eons, Buddha says. It's just programming, that's all, habit. So it takes a while to change these habits, people. And this is understanding the mind like this is breaking it down to its component parts, which is a very powerful thing to do.
That's true.
All right, darlings.
Now, one more consideration in the chat box.
What is the question?
Okay. From Linda, she states, it sounds then like a feeling is very basic and can be associated with, or she puts in parentheses, directed toward something valid such as love, or not valid such as attachment, or not such
well,
as...
no, feeling is almost comes first. Feeling comes first. So if you come into this life like that little boy with the habit of not killing, He had empathy and connectedness with those lice. He did not have unpleasant feelings. Compassion is not unpleasant feelings. He had joyful feelings, actually. He had empathy and wanted that little lice to be happy. So the feeling comes first. It's so primordial. Yes, it's fundamental, primordial. There's never a millisecond we're not having either a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. That's right. And then from there on, we make the mistakes. So we have to redirect it. And then the long-term point is this: from doing negative actions, those karmic seeds ripen as our unpleasant feelings in this life. And then from doing virtuous actions, they ripen as our pleasant feelings. So this is the tragedy. The fisherman thought those pleasant feelings came from fishing. They didn't. They were in his store of past virtuous karmic seeds. But the tragedy was he did wrong associating and assumed the fishing was the cause. So he tipped all his virtuous karmic seeds down the toilet by having good feelings in relation to fishing. So on the basis of his good feelings, he continued fishing, not knowing the proper analysis of what was the real cause of those good feelings. Every second of a good feeling, whatever the immediate catalyst is actually the fruit of a past virtue. Every second of an unpleasant feeling, whatever the catalyst is now, is the fruit of a negative action. This is the karmic one. It's very technical, very precise, you know. That's enough for now.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable.
Okay, precious ones. Thank you so much, everybody. And have your wonderful discussions. And then I'll see you in 2 weeks, isn't it?
Yes.
For our next module.
Yes, October 7th. Thank you.
Good. Go on then. What's happening now? Go on, Lars. What's the story?
We can do, did you want to do a quick dedication? Or do we have time for the Mandala offering?
Lars has a plan, I think.
The Mandala.
Yeah, so Robina, there's not words that we can come up with to thank you for those 4 weeks, and there's more to come. So with that gratitude, we would like to offer the entire universe to you.
Okay, a short one, a short mandala.
Yes, a short one.
Go on then.
We will then also, if you allow us, recite the long life prayer.
A little one, just one verse from it.
Yes.
One verse, choose one verse, darling.
Okay.
One verse from
so
it.
We will start with the
Go on
mandala.
then. Go.
They're in the video, if you can see them at the
Good, look at you. There's wonderful. There's the mandala. Wonderful. Go on then.
Yes.
Sing. Come on.
Om Sashi Perki Yukshin Medo Dramri Rablingji Nidegen Pari Sange Shindu Mekcheruagi Yokunam Dashila
Chayami. So just to say that what they did was they offered the mandala, but they also offered representations of the enlightened body, speech, and mind. So this is auspicious so that we can all accomplish enlightened body, speech, and mind. Very meaningful. Thank you, sweethearts.
And then one verse from the long life prayer.
Just one verse, yeah.
The first one, Mother of the victorious ones of 3 times in 10 directions, Dharmakaya, the great bliss embraced by great compassion, my perfect Aryatara, who in an ordinary form are the guide for us pitiful, transmigrating beings that guide us. How kind you are. May all your wishes be instantly fulfilled, and may your life be stable until samsara ends. Thank you, Venerable Robina.
That'll do. That's enough. Okay, good. That's it, darlings. So keep discussing, keep talking, keep understanding, and then we'll talk again in 2 weeks. And I'm so happy. Thank you, darlings. Much love, everybody. Much love, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Much
darlings.
love.
Bye.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Robina.